The internet didn't just whisper this time, it exploded. Because suddenly, one brutal question began echoing across talk shows, comment sections, and late-night monologues. Is Meghan Markle truly misunderstood? Or is the world finally catching on to a performance that has been hiding in plain sight? And when comedian Bill Maher reportedly tore into the situation while audiences laughed louder than expected, the conversation ignited again. Because what started as another emotional podcast appearance quickly spiraled into something far bigger. A storm of suspicion, criticism, and uncomfortable questions about authenticity, influence, and the carefully polished image of one of the most polarizing women in modern celebrity culture.
To the world, it's just, what has she been doing? Does she work? As opposed to, oh my gosh, I work so hard and I appreciate what hard work looks like. I like working hard.
The beginning of that clip where she's like, oh my God, it's like, it's so inauthentic.
The clip alone sent social media into chaos. On the surface, it looked like vulnerability. Meghan speaking openly, appearing emotional, tears hinted at the corners of her eyes, voice trembling just enough to make the moment feel deeply personal. But within minutes, viewers began dissecting every second like investigators examining surveillance footage. Some sympathized immediately, saying the Duchess was simply opening her heart. Others, they weren't buying it, not even a little, because critics insisted the moment felt rehearsed, too perfect, too polished, as if the emotion had been placed there deliberately, like a prop in a carefully staged scene. And suddenly, the internet wasn't just watching a podcast episode anymore, it was watching a mystery unfold. Then, things got even stranger, because the energy inside the interview room itself started raising eyebrows. The interaction between Meghan and host Jamie Kernley-Moore didn't feel like a normal interview to many observers. Instead of probing questions or even mild challenges, viewers noticed wave after wave of praise, admiration, and enthusiastic validation. It was so intense that some people online joked the conversation looked less like journalism and more like a fan club meeting happening in real time.
I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff. I would love reconciliation with my family. I've always, there's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious.
If you are trying to reconcile with your family, if you are trying to make amends, you don't go on TV and blame them again. This is literally the last.
That moment lit another fuse. Social media users began asking uncomfortable questions. Why did the exchange feel so suffocatingly supportive? Why was there almost no pushback? Was this really an interview or something closer to a promotional stage designed to polish Meghan's image? The reactions flooded in immediately. Memes, commentary threads, reaction videos, everyone suddenly had an opinion. And the more people watched the clip, the more they began noticing tiny details that only deepened the mystery surrounding the entire conversation. But the podcast drama was just the beginning, because right as that emotional interview started dominating headlines, another announcement dropped that made critics practically leap out of their chairs. Meghan Markle had been associated with Time magazine's list of influential women, instantly triggering a new wave of backlash. The reaction wasn't subtle. Commentators questioned the decision openly. Was the recognition truly about influence, or was it simply about celebrity visibility?
Meghan Markle is now accused of breaking the agreement with the late Queen after podcast revelation, with the compliments of HRH, which is Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of...
For some observers, the timing was explosive, because almost immediately afterward, another headline crashed into the news cycle: Prince Harry's BBC interview. And what should have been a simple media appearance quickly turned into a spectacle of awkward moments and tense revelations that left viewers cringing in disbelief.
Made homemade strawberry jam. It's kind of like a doctor when you keep referring to them as doctor and like, call me Susan. Like, I would never refer to myself as Her Royal Highness.
I think if somebody gives you a gift, you can say, so-and-so, my friend so-and-so gave me a present. Yeah. I don't feel like she needed to.
Suddenly, the narrative surrounding the couple began shifting again. The polished public image they often present started colliding with resurfacing whispers from the past. Former staff stories began creeping back into headlines. Rumors describing chaotic workplaces, demanding expectations, and confusing leadership styles started circulating once more. None of these claims were officially confirmed, yet their reappearance reignited an uncomfortable debate that has followed Meghan for years. The contrast between the warm public persona fans adore and the harsher reputation critics claim exists behind closed doors. And then came the business setbacks. The Spotify deal quietly ended. Netflix projects struggled to generate the kind of explosive success many had predicted. Each development alone might have been insignificant, but stacked together, they formed a pattern revelation that skeptics couldn't ignore. To them, it began looking like a brand built more on narrative than results, a brand powered by attention rather than achievement. And attention was exactly what the podcast episode had generated. By this point, the internet conversation had turned relentless. Some voices even argued Meghan should stop signing items as Her Royal Highness, insisting the title no longer matched her current role outside the royal institution. Whether fair or not, the criticism kept multiplying. Every appearance, every comment, every emotional moment was now being dissected under a microscope. Then the podcast itself delivered a moment that became instant meme material. When Meghan and Jamie discussed cooking and everyday life, the interaction struck many viewers as oddly theatrical. "No, I don't want to cook again, Meghan. My God, take a breath." That exchange alone fueled thousands of reaction clips. Critics claimed it perfectly captured the strange tone of the interview, a mixture of admiration, exaggerated familiarity, and almost performative enthusiasm. To some listeners, it felt charming. To others, it felt staged. But the skepticism didn't stop there. One moment in particular ignited the loudest reaction of all, the alleged tears, because viewers began pausing the video, zooming into screenshots, and asking a blunt question: where exactly were the tears? And she also is pretending that she's crying. Where's the tear? That accusation spread like wildfire. Commentators mocked the moment, joking that even Meghan's emotions must have a PR strategy behind them. Whether exaggerated or not, the damage was already done. Doubt had entered the conversation, and once doubt appears, it rarely leaves quietly. Meanwhile, supporters defended her fiercely, pointing out that public figures, especially women, are often criticized more harshly for showing emotion. They argued that vulnerability should not automatically be treated as manipulation, but critics countered with their own theory that emotional storytelling followed suspiciously close behind product launches and branding campaigns. Because right as the podcast generated enormous attention, Meghan's lifestyle products suddenly sold out within 30 minutes. An impressive statistic, until skeptics pointed out the possibility that the inventory might have been deliberately limited to create artificial urgency. A classic marketing tactic. Manufacture scarcity, generate hype, then let the headlines write themselves. As the debate intensified, Meghan also shared tender details about motherhood, revealing that she writes nightly emails to her 2 children, messages they can read when they grow older. The story sounded beautiful, heartfelt, almost cinematic, and yet even that moment became controversial, with critics arguing it sounded too perfect, like something lifted straight from a parenting guidebook designed to maximize emotional impact. By now, the internet had split into 2 fiercely opposing camps. One side believed Meghan was simply trying to tell her truth while navigating an unforgiving media environment. The other side believed they were watching something else entirely, a masterclass in image control disguised as vulnerability. And hovering above all of it was the same haunting question that refuses to disappear: are Meghan and Harry revealing their real story, or carefully directing a narrative designed to keep the spotlight exactly where they need it? The debate was only beginning, and what happened next would make the entire controversy even louder. The noise didn't fade after that podcast. If anything, it grew louder, sharper, almost accusatory, because just when the internet thought it had already dissected every second of Meghan Markle's emotional appearance, a new wave of commentary arrived that pushed the entire situation into even more explosive territory. Suddenly, analysts, columnists, royal insiders, and social media critics were all circling the same question: was this emotional storytelling genuine vulnerability, or a perfectly engineered public relations strategy designed to reshape a fading narrative? And that suspicion intensified when commentators began replaying a specific claim from the interview: the insistence that Meghan had not seen the questions beforehand. That detail was repeated multiple times during discussions about the podcast. But instead of reassuring viewers, it strangely had the opposite effect. People online began asking why the point needed to be emphasized so often. If everything was spontaneous, why keep highlighting it? For many critics, the repetition felt less like proof and more like persuasion, almost as if audiences were being encouraged to believe something they hadn't naturally accepted. Then another clip began circulating across media panels and reaction videos. This woman is a born manipulator. The Netflixing, she doesn't do the work. She don't make the jams. It's all made for her. That comment alone triggered a firestorm of debate. Supporters immediately called it unfair and cruel, accusing critics of constantly moving the goalpost whenever Meghan attempts to present a more personal side of herself. But skeptics fired back just as quickly, arguing that the criticism reflected a deeper frustration building among audiences who feel they are constantly being sold a narrative rather than shown genuine reality. Meanwhile, Meghan's stories throughout the interview repeatedly circled back to one central theme: herself, her experiences, her challenges, her projects, her ventures. Critics pointed out that the conversation rarely drifted away from her personal perspective, making the interview feel less like an open dialogue and more like a platform for personal branding. Then attention suddenly shifted toward Prince Harry again when another clip from his BBC interview began circulating online. I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff. That statement landed like a thunderclap because instead of sympathy, the reaction across many media outlets was surprisingly cold. Some commentators accused Harry of bringing private family conflicts into the public arena once again. Others argued that the emotional tone of the interview felt self-pitying rather than sincere. And then critics fired back even harder. That's a lie. You can take them back whenever you want. You can bring your own security. You can ensure that they're safe. The backlash snowballed rapidly. Social media erupted with accusations that the couple were continuing a pattern of public grievances against the royal family rather than quietly moving forward with their new lives. Commentators argued that every interview seemed to reopen wounds that had barely begun to heal. But perhaps the harshest criticism came from those who believed Meghan's influence itself was being exaggerated. She decided she didn't want to be a real princess because to be a real princess involves duty and responsibility. That remark struck a nerve because it revived one of the most persistent narratives surrounding Meghan, that she wanted the glamour of royal life without the responsibilities attached to it. Critics painted a dramatic picture: Meghan stepping away from the monarchy, relocating to Hollywood, signing massive media deals, and attempting to transform royal notoriety into a global celebrity brand. And yet, as months passed, some of those projects struggled to deliver the level of cultural impact many expected. Spotify ended its deal. Netflix projects failed to ignite the streaming world the way analysts predicted. Observers began wondering whether the strategy behind the Sussex media empire was actually coherent or simply reactive. Meanwhile, whispers about former staff members resurfaced once again. Stories describing chaotic work environments and constantly shifting expectations appeared in multiple reports. According to these accounts, instructions often changed suddenly, communication became confusing, and morale fluctuated dramatically behind the scenes. None of the claims were officially verified, yet their reappearance fueled a growing perception that something complicated might be happening behind the polished public image. As the speculation intensified, critics also began analyzing Meghan's rapid shift into lifestyle branding. Product launches, rebranding attempts, and new ventures appeared in quick succession. Some observers admired the hustle, arguing she was simply building a business like any modern entrepreneur. Others saw something different, a desperate attempt to throw ideas into the market and see which one finally stuck. One commentator summarized the suspicion bluntly: it felt like everything was being thrown at the wall just to see what would stay there. Media analysts are now asking a critical question about the future of their strategy. Can Meghan and Harry continue this level of constant public exposure without audiences eventually experiencing fatigue? Because in today's media environment, attention can be both a powerful asset and a dangerous liability. Some experts believe the constant interviews, documentaries, and public statements risk exhausting the public's patience. The more often emotional revelations appear, the less impact they carry. Eventually, audiences begin questioning motives rather than absorbing the message. Others argue the opposite. In the modern attention economy, controversy itself is currency. Even criticism keeps the spotlight burning bright, and as long as people continue talking, analyzing, and debating, the couple remains culturally relevant. And as millions of viewers continue watching every interview clip, every emotional confession, every public reaction, the line between authenticity and performance grows blurrier than ever. One thing is certain though: the drama surrounding Meghan Markle isn't ending anytime soon. In fact, it may only be getting started.